Hello and welcome to another gauge demo from FIPgauges.com. Today we're taking a look at my new button programming gauge. This is available for virtual FIP or physical FIPs. There is a slight difference between them if you're using keyboards, and I'll cover that in a moment. But basically this enables you to program the buttons on your FIPs to do whatever you like. Okay, so I haven't quite worked out the pricing plan for this gauge. I may be giving it away free with any other gauge. I may start charging for it. It really depends on the level of support that I need to provide for it. I cannot, unfortunately, support any issues you're having programming the buttons within SPAD. You need to have some understanding of button programming in SPAD before you have a play with this, so I would advise having a play in SPAD before you dive into this. Okay, so let's start with the dials. So the right dial will change the background. So the gauge should open with this little info page telling you what the buttons do. But basically you turn the right dial to select one of 9 different colored backgrounds. And the left dial, if you're using this on a physical FIP, it will turn the button lights on and off, so you won't be able to see that obviously on this demo, but that will turn the button lights on and off. So let's select a background I like. Let's go for the blue and white. So the colors of the text is temporary. I've set it as a sort of neutral color so that it can be seen on all of the backgrounds. You can change the color of that in SPAD quite easily, and I'll show you some basic programming in a second too. Okay, so to change the button labels, all we need to do is set the button we want to program within the SPAD UI, and then we click on the change label button. We click there, and now we've got this little button labeling window that pops up, which enables us to change the colors, the font, the size, and some other stuff. So we'll set that to white. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some spaces in front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Save. Now if you're using a VFIP, putting the spaces in front helps so that the buttons when they appear don't cover the labels. So I've actually got this gauge enlarged at the moment, but normally these buttons would appear over the labels. So if you just add a few spaces in front of the label, then when the buttons pop up it won't cover the labels. So we'll go back in and change that label, and what I'm going to make this button do is on a left click I'm going to make it open the ATC window, and on a right click I'm going to get it to change my flight director. Okay, and we'll save that, and the button label changes. Oh dear, spelling mistake. Okay, so that's the label changed. Now we just need to program the function. So S1 is highlighted, we hit the add event and we click on the press short, and what we're going to do is the press short is going to be the ATC and not a CT. Let's go back and change that again. There you go. Right, so now we're going to add event, press short, add action, and we're going to do ATC, so that's a simulation event, and we'll find ATC. There's the ATC menu. That's fine, that's fine. So now that should activate the ATC, and I'm going to do a right click, which is a long press event. It's going to be the flight director, so add, press long, action, simulation event, flight director toggle. Okay, and okay. So now let's go over to the sim, and what I need to do is in chase pane I need to change the view. Okay, so now when I click with the left key, you can see the ATC window opens and closes. And when I click with the right button, the flight director down here, as you can see, it toggles the flight director on and off. So that's a fairly easy bit of programming. Okay, so let's do another button. I'm going to do S2 this time. So let's turn off the ATC. Okay, switch back to SPAD. And we're going to now do function 2. Okay, so function 2, I'm going to make that my camera change, and then we can do some keyboard events here now. So on the left click, I'm going to add an event, and bear with me while I add in a dummy event. Now there's a slight bug in SPAD. When you send the keystrokes to a window, the keystrokes are sent before the window activates. So I've had to just put a little frig in for now, and I'm sending a left shift to the window for the window to activate. Then I'll send the keystrokes I actually want to send to the application so that I can get the cameras to change. So I'm just going to add a quick left shift in here, and I'm going to send that to the flight sim. And then I'm going to add another keyboard event, the actual keyboard event, which is a Shift Control I. That changes my camera, and I'm going to send that to the flight simulator. Now Chase Plane monitors the flight sim keystrokes, and it will intercept that and change the cameras accordingly. Okay, so that's that one, and then I'm going to do a right click event, which is a long press on a physical FIP. And once again, I'm going to do the keyboard quick press of the left shift. That invokes the window. Need to make certain it's the simulator. Now you don't have to add this left shift to activate the window if you're using a physical FIP. The reason why you have to add it if you're using virtual FIPs is because when you click on the virtual FIP button, the virtual FIP becomes the active window. So it then tries to send the keystroke to the application you're sending it to. But as I said, unfortunately, the window doesn't activate quick enough and the keystrokes are lost. So that's why I'm sending a left shift or any other button that can be ignored by the application. That will activate the window. Then you'll send the second command to send your controls. So it's a little bit of a workaround for virtual FIPs. It's only needed for virtual FIPs, so you can skip that sort of thing. For a physical FIP, it's not needed. And we'll add in the actual commands, which is a Shift Control Z, and that should be fine. Sometimes you might want to set the key stroke for a little bit longer. I tend to prefer 250 milliseconds. Seems to be a bit more reliable. Okay. So now I want to label that button. Change label, make it white. And we'll call that next camera, and in and outside, save. Okay, so now we're in the simulator. If I press the S2 button with the left key, it now changes my camera. It's sending the keystrokes to the simulator, and Chase Plane is acting on those. And if I also change the right button, click the right button, it will change the cameras from the inside camera. And now I can click through the rest outside cameras. And right click takes it back inside again and toggles the inside cameras. So I've now got full control of those cameras just by using the keystrokes. Okay, so now I'm going to set up another button, and I've already labeled this one flight status, and we are going to just change that slightly. There's a space missing, I think. That's better. And we're going to basically use text to speech. Now this function is available in the complete edition of SPAD, so if you're lucky enough to have that, you'll be able to use text to speech in your gauges as well. But this is just an example of stuff that you can do with this gauge. So let's go and program button 3. We'll add a new event, short press. We'll add an action, speak text. This time I'm going to read out the radio height and set the value to 0 so it doesn't do any decimals. And I'm going to tell it to say altitude and then play the altitude. I'm then going to get to say airspeed, and then I'm going to get to say the airspeed. Let's go for the indicated. Set that to decimal. Okay. So let's switch back to the flight simulator. So now when I press S3, the flight status.
Altitude 1,607 feet. Airspeed 237 knots.
So there you go. It just basically read out my altitude and my current airspeed, which is correct on both counts. So you can add other text-to-speech things as well. But obviously any available function in SPAD can be programmed against a FIP button, just like any other button or dial on any piece of hardware. You can program the FIPs to do just that, and you've got pre-labeling. Now I actually used this gauge for Photoshop, so it doesn't have to be Flight Simulator, because you can send keystrokes to any application. You can use these gauges to manipulate your apps. So I've got 60 plus buttons on my FIPs that I can use for Photoshop, and I can label them. So I can hit S1 and it'll be my brush presets, and S2 it'll be something else. So and I also do the same thing with Elite Dangerous. I have my FIPs running my other games and interacting with those games using keystrokes as well. Okay, so we'll program button 4 to do something slightly different, and we'll set that to initiate an engine fire. So that's another thing that you can do. You can use the buttons to activate failures, so you can do flight training. So I'm going to set S4 to engine fire. I've already labeled it and colored it nicely red. So we're going to add an event, short press or left click for VFIP, add action, change data value. We're going to look for fire. Okay, so engine 1 fire, and obviously you can set any or all the engines to do this, but I'm only just going to set the one. Okay, and we're going to set that to on, and okay. So now we'll switch back to the simulator, and now all I need to do is hit the S4 button to initiate the engine fire.
Engine fire. Engine fire.
There you go. So the engine fire is well ablaze. So the engine fire is actually playing from a script panel that I've set up to monitor engine fires, and that plays back text to speech. Once again, if you've got the complete edition of SPAD, you can do some fancy things like that as well. Also, if you're lucky enough to have my BIP gauge, you can see that the engine fire light is lit on that as well. So that's another function that you can add, but as I said, you're not limited except by your imagination. Okay, so a couple of really small things. I've been asked, how do you remove a label if you don't want to program it? How do you get rid of the label? So we'll get rid of function 5. So we'll go to button 5, change label, and we highlight and simply hit a single space, and then the label disappears. So that's quite simple. Now if you're running this on a physical FIP and you've got the lights turned on, so let's turn the lights on here, you'll notice that all the lights are lit including the one that has no function. So I'm just going to close this window so it emulates what was on the virtual FIP. So we now have removed that label, but the light's on. So if you want to remove that light, you can simply click on the left dial, and here's the left dial programming. So a counterclockwise turn turns all the lights off, and a clockwise turn turns all the lights on. So if you don't want button 5 to turn on, just edit the clockwise turn, set the button you want, open and edit. Instead of turning that on, you can set it to off. And now basically when you run the virtual FIP, we'll detach that and we'll turn the lights on and off. You can see that button 5 no longer comes on. Okay. And if you obviously want to undo that, you can simply edit, go back to the button and set that button to back on. Okay, and then we can toggle that back on, so it's back on now. Now, if you decide that obviously you want to relabel that, you can simply click on it and add a new label. And if you want to put it back to the default label that's loaded with the gauge, then you can simply click on it, change label, and delete the label, and that restores it back to the default of when it loads with the gauge. Now, while I've actually said that you can move the labels to the right by adding spaces, you can actually drag the labels. I wouldn't advise it because it's fiddly, but you're more than welcome to move the labels around the screen if you want as well. So function 5 is currently highlighted with change label, and you can actually change the size of the label, and you can move it around as well. So you can actually drag it over if you want to, instead of put spaces in front of it, and you can size the label accordingly and then save that. Personally, I prefer the spaces because it keeps them all nicely aligned. Trying to get all of these aligned, if you manually move the labels, it can be quite tricky. So yeah, so a lot of messing about, but you can drag them if you want to, and of course they don't even have to stay by S4. You can stick it anywhere you like. Not that that really helps you, but you can put the labels anywhere, but probably best not because they tie up with the buttons. Okay, but once again, if you want to put that back, you go change label and you can delete, and it'll restore it back to how it was. And we can do S5, change label, delete, and that puts them back. So if you do mess it up, it's quite easy to undo. So there's no real limit to what you can do with this gauge, except your imagination. Now, obviously, as I said, it does require a certain amount of knowledge of programming SPAD, and I hope the couple of examples I've shown you have helped give you some ideas yourself. But you can add any SimConnect or FSUIPC commands that you want to control your simulator, virtual joysticks, and anything that you can program in SPAD can be set against a FIP button. But it's not limited to flight simulators. You can do anything you like. You can even send notes to Notepad, operate Word, change cells in Excel. Yeah, there's no real limits to what you can do with it. Okay, so once again, I must reiterate, I cannot support the button programming aspect of this gauge. Of course, I'll look after the gauge, and any problems with the gauge, I can help you out with that. But if you're stuck with how do I open my doors, I want to press S4 and my doors aren't opening, I can't really help you with that. You need to understand and know SPAD a little to be able to program the FIP buttons, and unfortunately, as much as I would like to be able to help you all build your simulators and configure the buttons, I just don't have the time to be able to get involved at that level. It's one of the reasons why I'm potentially going to give this away for free, but keep an eye out in the store. As I say, it'll either be released at a relatively low cost as a result of the lack of support to the button programming, or I may even give it away free, as I said, with any other purchase. And hopefully you don't mind so much that I can't get too much into the nitty-gritty of doing your programming for you. So I hope you found this video useful, and I hope you like the idea of the gauge. And if you've got any ideas about how we can make it better, then feel free to give me a shout. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and come back and check out some of our other videos. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.